Welcome to Rise the Victor, hosted by seasoned therapists Chris and Lindsay Meaden. Here we get straight to the point on mental well-being, coaching and therapy. Each episode dives deep into various topics, exploring effective ways to overcome challenges and transform your life. Get ready to challenge the norms and revolutionize your perspective. This is Rise the Victor podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of Rise the Victor. My name is Lindsay.
And I'm Chris.
And to anyone who doesn't know, we are actually husband and wife, and we run our own trauma therapy business. So what are we talking about today, Chris?
Well, you tell me, actually. This is one which you're really passionate about.
We were going to talk about something else, but this is something that I've become aware of in the last week. I think in only the last week. And it's triggered something within me. That's something I've discovered that I'm really passionate about this topic. This has got me, my ears are listening, my eyes are open, and I am very much learning a lot about this. And I want to talk about this today because it's something I feel really strongly about. And it's about smartphone-free childhood. What do you think when you hear that, Chris?
It would be bliss. There'd be so many people who have better mental health. It's a huge contributor to problems with childhood mental health. And we've effectively allowed the smartphone revolution to take over our children's imagination, their lives. And it's massively impacting how we're able to parent our children. So I think that we have the first generation now, which we can see what the impact of mobile phones, in particular smartphones, is. And it's not good.
And this is the thing. We had, back when, smartphones first came out in, was it 2006, 2007?
I think so, something like that.
Around that time. And at that time, we had no understanding of the impact this is going to have on children and teenagers. Now we do. 2024, the evidence is overwhelming and we need to do something about it now. Smartphones are highly addictive. We know that. We know it firsthand with ourselves. We are grown-ups, and yet I'm guilty of allowing my smartphone to essentially get in the way of life, where it's become almost permanently attached to my hand. And prior to 2020, March 2020, when everything shut down around the world, I wasn't really that addictive to my phone. I didn't really use it much. I wasn't on it much. But obviously the world went through a stage where suddenly everything had to go online. We weren't allowed to go out and do things and meet with people. And we moved everything online. And then our phones became the way to live. For me in particular, because I lost my brother to suicide in June 2020. And for me, I needed to share my grief journey online. I needed to connect and join communities of others who had lost loved ones to suicide. So from that point, I then did start using my phone more and more, to the point where it's become damaging. And I know that. I'm a grown-up and I can see the impact it's had on my mental, emotional well-being. And I'm very aware of the impact that's having on our children. At the time, back in 2020, they were 3.5, our twins. They're now 7. And I've completely changed how I'm using my phone now. If they see me with my phone, they know it's mummy's working. But I'm very much aware that when I'm with them, that phone is elsewhere. It's not with me unless I'm taking a call, but it's not how it was previously. And I think they look up to us. If they're seeing everyone around them, teenagers, older children, grown-ups, constantly on their phones, what's it doing to their... Yes, Chris?
If you think about the school run, kids walking to school, they used to call it the BlackBerry stoop. People fixated to their BlackBerries when that was in fashion. And now it's the smartphone stoop, looking down on the phone, walking along the pavement, not paying attention, walking in front of cars.
Oh, I know.
And I run around the neighborhood and kids are just totally oblivious to anything. And I'm sure there's a number of accidents as a result of their lack of awareness around them. It was actually June 2007 the first iPhone came out. But obviously, we're talking about our twins, but also I have my boys who are 22 and 21. And I've seen with them having the mobile phones at the early stages. It's massively impacted because it's access to the social media platforms, which really is the issue here. Obviously, smartphones do have all the games and gaming apps and stuff like that. But I'd say the biggest influencer is the access to social networks. Say they have a limitation on age of a certain that you can open an account, but everyone opens accounts below their age and have instant access to all kinds of inappropriate content,
Yeah.
and that's shaping the worldview of a child as to what's expected. And with social media platforms, is a voyeurism into this unrealistic world, which people portray themselves as having this certain lifestyle. If you ask a kid what you want to do now, it's I want to be a social media influencer, and they think that's really cool and hip, and they don't realize what work behind it. But it's a portrayal of this is what people want to do.
I was shocked actually on a children's TV show. Am I allowed to mention it or not?
I'm sure we're okay. We're small enough to not to be.
It's on Blue Peter, which my little boy was watching. Our little boy was watching recently, and they had a social media influencer come on, and I was horrified to think they were congratulating this person on how many likes and followers they had. What is
Yeah.
that doing? What message is that sending out? I was actually quite shocked. I always thought Blue Peter was wholesome and good values and would not be encouraging this. I think I'm actually going to write a message in. I just, the messaging is all wrong. And I think not everyone, sorry, a lot of people are getting caught up into this trance that this is the way forward. We have to embrace technology. But my goodness, it's so much more than this. This is not just about technology. This is about how we are being hypnotized and programmed by this social media, this tech, this dopamine that's in our hand, giving us that rush of feel good feelings. And if we don't have it, then we're the stress hormones, and it's going round and round in a vicious circle of needing this. And then if you don't have it, you're missing out. And the pressure from others that if you don't have it, there's something wrong with you. And then there's bullying.
Yeah, and just think about the pressures, the social pressures of having the latest phone. These phones cost like 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds a month subscription. And parents are providing children with these new phones because that's what the pressure is from all the other kids. So it's putting an additional cost to the household and a continuous cycle of upgrade, upgrade, upgrade. I think we're starting to get a little bit tired of it now with the big manufacturers making their systems fail when really the technology is there for them to last forever. It's just that they put software updates to make the things slow down, so we have to buy a new one.
Yep.
And it's a cycle we're in. But ultimately, if you have an old phone, you get ridiculed at school, same as
Yep.
if you don't have a right type of clothes. So
Well,
you're creating this situation where the haves and have-nots. Parents will spend money on a smartphone subscription payment rather than maybe spending money on better nutrition for their child.
and and back in our day, back in the 70s and 80s, that for us it was things like trainers, or if we didn't have
Yeah.
the latest trainers or certain items of clothing or whatever. And so it's just moving with the times. It's just now it's expensive technology, but it doesn't mean to say that we have to carry on with that. And still that pressure it's so wrong. And I actually did some research talking to those in their late teens, early 20s, who have had access to the smartphones, who have joined all these social media sites, and to get their input. And it was interesting. One of the feedbacks I had was, he said, having social media can be beneficial in helping young generations to feel understood and also educated. That statement right there shocked me. 2 reasons: to feel understood. So their needs are not being met. Why are they feeling that they're not being understood or heard?
And that's a role of parenting. not a role of providing information. But now what happens is that you give a child a phone and basically I'm getting on a bit. So in my day, you had 4 TV channels. That was it. And then you had
Yep.
the 5th channel. So you knew what your child was watching or what you could watch, you could be exposed to. There was no YouTube. There was no social networks. Now you get a phone and you've got a doorway to the world, to the internet. But for the vast majority, it's unrestricted. And most parents don't know how to use the technology to control that content. So consequently, a child who has natural curiosity is accessing stuff way above their age and watching all kinds of things like we know ourselves, the Americanisms from TV shows, which are influencing children. And ultimately, because of the content of these different platforms. And whilst it's an evolution of technology, there's just not enough awareness of how much mental health issues are being created. I see time and time again people who are addicted to phones, phone access, phone use, or social media, and especially for females, is your self-worth, self-confidence is defined on how many shares and likes you get on your latest post, your latest selfie. And if it's not good enough, you take it again and maybe make it more provocative until you get enough likes. So you're handing over your self-worth, self-image, self-esteem, all the same alignment to something external to you, which you have no control. So you're at the hands of social networks to then define whether or not you feel good about yourself. So consequently, you're losing that ability, and whereas you build it up yourself. But that's the thing; it's the clue is self, but instead it's been handed over and passed over to social networks to
Yep.
give us that
Yep. I'm just going
validation.
to read through. There's a really good website called delaysmartphones.org.uk, and they list the evidence where these major issues. So it's a really good site to look at. So the evidence, obviously, the sexual content and behavior that they are witnessing, exposing children to this very offensive content, pressuring girls into sending images of themselves and exposing children to abuse and grooming. Then there's the physical health. It's actually damaging children's eyes. Again, this is proof. This is evidence. There's evidence backed here. This isn't just scaremongering. It contributes to obesity in children. They're saying 9 hours a day average screen time in kids with a smartphone, 43% higher risk of obesity for those using smartphones for 5 hours plus per day. Preventing
Wow.
children playing outside. Children spend twice as long looking at screens as playing outside. Damaging the development of children's spine. 69% of children reporting neck pain due to smartphone use. And 81% displaying a neck disability of children studied with a smartphone. Stopping kids getting enough sleep. And as we know, us as grown-ups, we know the impact, again, screens, smartphone have on our sleep. And then there's the mental and emotional health. It's responsible for a huge increase in cyberbullying and children not having any respite from bullies when they're at home, when they're away from school or other places. Even if they're at home, that bullying is still happening there on their screens. 84% of bullying to children with smartphones happens online. There's the increase in depression and anxiety in children. Since 2004, 98% more depression in under 18s. 10% of under 17s have attempted suicide. And sadly, as I know, because I'm very much now in this community of suicide loss, and I see from parents, from family members who have lost young children, we're talking 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, I think is the youngest that I've heard of. 9.
That's crazy,
Absolutely
isn't it?
devastating. And it's all stems back, it's connected to smartphones, screens, smartphones, bullying. And then there's the
And
increasing loneliness in children as well.
and look, the thing is that we're talking about, this is research up to this point.
Mm,
So this is where we're at. We're just on the start of the AI revolution, and then we're talking about having individual tutors, you can have effective relationships with like an AI girlfriend, an AI boyfriend, AI friends. So everything from this point forward is going to be amplified even greater. So you have a total disconnect from proper real world, and you have this new AI thing where, I mean, it was bad enough when filters came in a few years ago, where you can take a photo of yourself and press a button, beautify yourself, make yourself younger, or do all these various different things. So when you're looking at people on photos, they are false, and it's like the recent advertising from Google, the AI, where you can change a person's head pose to align with the photo. So you got an unrealistic memory of a photo taken, and it's been AI touched up. And of course, we're going to have deep fakes for the whole election in the UK, the election in the US. All this stuff is all coming, and the enabler is in a mobile phone. And as parents of children, we don't have enough education as to what we need to do and how we can control this. And this is just getting out of control, and it's going to get worse and worse. Yeah. And you said about grooming. I've had people who have been blackmailed, young kids who have been blackmailed at the age of 12. And as you said, made to send photos of themselves and then being blackmailed for money. I've had quite a few clients in which I've had to deal with the trauma, PTSD as a result. These things are becoming more and more common. And this campaign is perfect, and it's just at the right time, because also what happens is that prior to the mobile phone, if you wanted to meet up with your friends, you had to flex your muscle in your brain to actually decide where you're going to meet up. You need to coordinate with your friends. You had to do things. If you were out in town, then you'd have to have you wouldn't have a mobile phone. You'd have a telephone boxes. You'd have phone cards. Now, I'm not suggesting to go back to that, but what happened in the process is you developed a decision muscle in your brain to be able to flex about making decisions. What happens now is we have helicopter parenting, where you just say, Mum, can you pick us up? Dad, can you pick us up? Can you take us here? Take us there? And it's just a text away, a WhatsApp away. So that the child's brain is not being developed to have ability to make decisions and reasoning. So when they become adults, when they actually have to go into the world and create a career, they don't have that decision muscle built up in their brain. And consequently, that creates a whole lot of issues. So we've
Yeah,
got lots of things which we've not really taken in consideration. It's only showing up now, where this generation of people who have had smartphones are now entering the workplace, and then there's realization of how inadequately they are equipped for life in employment. And of course, with employment being so different, with AI coming through, changing jobs, the technology which is coming through is going to totally change. And we're talking massive changes in the next 2 to 3 years, which is
yeah,
totally transform how we look at life.
absolutely. I'll just carry on with this evidence that's on this
Yeah.
website, because it's really interesting and I really want to bring people's attention to it. So I said, increasing loneliness in children. Loneliness has doubled in children since 2012. School loneliness is highest where access to smartphones and internet use is high. This was some data done in 2021. Making children more likely to self-harm. 24% of UK girls aged 17 have self-harmed. 140% increase in hospitalisation rates for self-harm since 2010. Suicide rates for girls are rising. Are smartphones to blame? Again, that's a study back in 2023. The first generation of children who were given smartphones in primary school are now adults. And we know for every year, know for every year younger they were given smartphones by their parents, their mental health is worse today. I don't get that sentence. I've read that wrong. But basically, yeah, mental health. As we know, there's a pandemic, mental health, suicidal thoughts. People are suffering. And that's the real pandemic going on. Focus and brain changes. Addictive. It's so addictive. We know that. And children's brains aren't even fully developed. And yet they're getting those addictive behaviors. 46% of teens say they use their phones almost constantly. 23% of young people have dysfunctional relationships with their smartphones. 1 in 4 children have problematic smartphone use. It reduces the children's ability to focus. Nearly 40% of children experience reduced levels of concentration due to smartphones, creating structural changes to children's brains. excessive smartphone use associated with psychiatric, cognitive, emotional, medical, and brain changes. And then there's social development, as you were saying just a moment ago, reducing time with friends in person, socializing, the ability to actually think for themselves.
On that front, if you think you see and friends catch up and they're in a circle and they're texting themselves on their phones rather than
I know.
looking up and talking to them to talk, you think, what is going on here? You're in front of a person, communicate. It's all about the social skills. The increase in social anxiety is massive because people aren't developing those skills because they're just stuck in the phone.
It's terrifying to see. I see that so much. And what I find scary is that our little ones at primary school, they're 7. Every day we're doing the school run. We see all the other year groups around. Years 5 and 6, I think it is, have smartphones. So they what age? 9, 10, 11. But they have to hand their smartphones in now at the office. The problem is, as soon as those children come out from school, that's it. They're right there with their smartphones, staring at them, gathering around in groups, looking at their screens. What message is that giving to our younger ones who look up to those children in year 5 and 6? I'm on a mission. I'm going to speak to the school about this, and I'll tell you more about what the movement I've joined in a moment, because we have to act now. We cannot simply keep ignoring this and putting our head in the sand and saying, but that's the way of the world today. It's expected. We can't, we just have to be a little bit more accepting. No, I'm sorry. No, we don't. We actually have to protect our children now, because if we don't, we are going to be in a far worse place in years to come. We have to speak up now and make the change. Our children need us to help. They are relying on us. So just going back to that website about social development, reducing time with friends in person, reducing children's ability to empathize and communicate. Kids are less able to read facial expressions or show empathy compared to previous generations. And encouraging kids to turn to their peers over their parents, which I find very worrying because, as we know, every household, every parenting style is different. Children have very different values, different views, different upbringings. And if children are turning to their friends for advice, for help, you don't know what they're learning and what they're picking up. And some of it can be good, but some of it can be harmful.
And that's only
Every
going to shift to
child...
AI going forward.
Say again?
That's only going to shift to AI going forward.
Yep. So they'll be turning to artificial intelligence to answer their worries, their questions. They're needing help. Get my AI to give me advice. Wow. So that is a really powerful. And I said just a moment ago about how I've joined this movement called Smartphone Free Childhood in the UK. So it's .co.uk. Really recommend, if you have children at school, or even if you don't, but if it is a topic that you feel very strongly about, like I do, as you can probably tell. I've recently joined, there's WhatsApp groups for your counties and then for your local towns or villages and then for your schools. So you can bring parents together or those who have a real strong interest in this and then start working together with parents, supporting each other, getting a better understanding of what's happening, and then working with the schools. So we're communicating, we're actually talking about this topic. We're actually sharing our views, doing research, sharing the knowledge, sharing the advice, and allowing us to really open up this conversation so that the world is listening, so that children are allowed to actually have a smartphone-free childhood, because I am determined to keep talking about this topic now that I'm aware that it wasn't just me feeling this and thinking about this, feeling nobody else thinks the same as me. It must be just me.
There is the movie, The Social Dilemma, I think it's
Yeah.
Social Dilemma, which is basically interviewing the engineers who created the infinite scroll, like button, and the different elements. And they were designed for different purposes in mind, but they ended up being used. Any social media platform is always trying to keep you attached to the screen so they can deliver adverts to sell you some product or service. And that's unavoidable now. Like you have Google ads, you have Facebook ads, you have Instagram ads, and the whole premise is that we've handed over our privacy and given them the ability to mine our data, our interests, our likes, our dislikes, and then serve up targeted adverts to us. So they have no interest in you having a quick pop on and look at your messages and then pop back off again. They want you stuck on that. And the program really, if the film really does highlight how the algorithms work, and obviously the algorithms change all the time, but it gives you a good idea as to what they do. And at the end, they asked the engineers, does your children have mobile phones? And they all said no. And these are the guys who designed the platforms. So that's just the evidence of just
It
they
says
know
it all, doesn't it? That sums
exactly.
it up right there. They
Yeah,
know what's behind it. They know the impact it has. They know how damaging it is. They're not letting their own children have it. And yet
yeah,
the rest of us are just being sort of following the crowd, following the herd and thinking, yeah, this is fine. It's okay. But equally, I'm aware that there are many parents that believe strongly that children shouldn't have smartphones as well, but they are afraid to actually speak up and say that. They are unsure how to go about changing it because they know the pressure the child or children are going to be asking for this. And then they're worried their children are going to get bullied because if you don't
mm,
give in and give them a phone, they're opening up their child to being bullied
yeah,
by having it or not having it. Either way, you can't win. And then as
yeah.
parents, we're stuck in that place of what do we do? How can we help when whatever we do, our child is being put in a difficult position? And all we want for our children is absolutely to ensure they have the best start to life. And we want to do everything we can to protect them in without being harmed by bullying and cyberbullying and everything else that they're exposed to because
And that has to
childhood.
come from us. That has to come from the schools in making it okay that children don't have mobile phones. It's for them
Yeah,
to set the environment that a mobile phone is not a measure in identity or in any shape or form. It's a choice being offered or being taken by a parent to safeguard their child. You're still not going to stop children showing their mobile phones to their other kids unless they don't have the mobile phones in the
this
school in
is
the
it.
first place.
It's about saying that actually not having a
Mm,
smartphone in childhood is the norm,
yeah.
and having a smartphone is actually quite unusual. And it seems, and it should be, and this is the other one I was going to move on to, is about what are the alternatives? Because I'm totally aware of parents needing to communicate with their children. Obviously, we couldn't do that in our childhoods. We just had to send messages from one person to another person to get back to our parents, or they may not have known where we were, but that was very different then. Nowadays, parents do need to have more communication. There's a lot more activities out of school going on, and everyone's rushing around and it's a faster pace, and there needs to be that communication. So there are alternatives to smartphones. So children can still ring their parent, or their parent can still call their child and text, and with location trackers or access to maps or something like that. I can't imagine children picking up A to Zs looking through
No,
like we
no,
had
no.
to do. Yeah, again, on smartphonefreechildhood.co.uk, they list the brilliant alternatives. So you've got the Nokias. We had initially the brick phones, didn't we, with the great big
Yeah, yeah.
aerials and the heavy
Mm.
things. And it's about making them just more functional. Actually, you don't
I
need
mean,
all this
it's
media.
not. This is something really. It'd be amazing if the phone manufacturers could have a switch where you basically press a button or it's scheduled and it flicks to a basic phone with basic functionality. So when you're going to school, you've got a map, I'd be able to track to be able to message, but all the other distractions are all removed. So it's like a really basic interface. It's like a basic phone. And then when they return back from school, then it flicks back to the smartphone that we know of
No, but we don't
today.
want the smartphone at all. And that's my point, honey.
One of the things is that, as you said, that alleviates the situation for parents feeling they have a need for knowing where their child is traveling home from school.
Mhm.
Okay, obviously still putting the phones in because ultimately If a phone is just a map or being able to message, a really basic phone,
Yep.
you've got the same phone, but you effectively got a limited functionality. So they're not sitting on social media, they're not playing games, they're not doing it. They're focusing on commuting back home from school or to school. And then in a controlled manner, then you can turn on some of that stuff. So this halfway house,
Yeah, I
because people,
disagree. I
it's on
disagree.
or off is really I think there has to be stepping stones to it.
I disagree.
Um,
I think up until the age of probably 15, 16, there shouldn't be any access to social media stuff at all.
yeah.
It's a massive topic, but it's just the evidence is there. We've seen it. And as you
Mm,
say, your boys are now 21, 22.
yeah.
You know, we've seen the impact, and I've spoken to a lot of those in teenage years and what they're explaining to us and how they're thinking now because of the exposure they've had with social media. And I think if we just make it so that they literally have just a phone that is for calling, for texts, with a map, with a location tracker and a few other little simple things. But there's not even behind the scenes any social media stuff to be switched on later.
Mm,
I think the phones have got to be there to provide that functionality of being able to communicate with parents, and that's it. And that we have to educate. And I think this is where the schools come in, that it's the schools have got to work with the parents, and we have got to educate teachers, parents, children. You know, we're going to talk to our children, our twins, about the reasons why we believe social media is not for children. It's not suitable for their age groups, or even when they're 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And even then they can make a decision whether they feel that it's something they want to do when they're old enough to make better decisions. But at this age, their brains are not fully developed. They're like sponges, and they're absorbing so much information. And that is setting up, it's programming their world, their minds in such a way that if we don't start talking to them about it now and explaining what's actually happening, why social media has the success that it has, they're just gonna follow along with the crowd, and just nothing's gonna change.
and this is the thing, you can see just how big a subject there is,
It is.
and trying to get consensus. I think there has to be, because people won't take it up because the change is so extreme, and and what will be pushed is there's some positives. There are positives to having access to information if it's controlled, but it's a case of how that's delivered. And obviously the social media companies have failed up to this point to actually do anything significantly without being pushed by government to do something, because they're just monopolizing on our data, and obviously for their corporate gain. But it certainly needs to be. I mean, it'd be great if there's a more of a social aware organization, which was almost like a cooperative or some format, which was for the community and community focused rather than corporate focused for bottom line profit, which of course all these organizations are. So yeah, it's a big subject, but I think the conversations need to be had now and decisions need to be made quickly to get to a better understanding, because both you and me are seeing more and more people coming through with issues with social anxiety, with trauma, which is based off of bullying, based off of all kinds of pressures from these platforms. Because ultimately, the mobile phone in itself is an amazing invention. It's what's running on it, which is basically the social media
Yeah.
platforms and the games. And as I said, they're designed to release dopamine in your brain to keep you hooked. And that's what's creating so many issues. So we're having this addictions.
It's a topic that I could talk for hours about. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about it. I feel very strongly about it. And watch this space because I've joined this movement, and I'm certainly going to do everything I possibly can to get changes, to ensure that parents get the support that they need, because we do need the support, but we have to work together. We have to work as a community. And again, with the schools, it's all about coming together as a community, understanding, supporting one another, and ensuring that we can make the difference to help our children, to help the next generation. I'm looking forward to our next episode and hope that those of you listening will join us and listen to all our other episodes. And we've got interviews as well coming up. So thank you, Chris.
And thank you, listeners, for listening in. And if you like this episode, then do like and share. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Rise the Victor. If you found our discussions enlightening and want to learn more, visit us at risethevictor.com. To explore working directly with Chris, head over to chrismeaden.com, and for opportunities with Lindsay, visit lindsaymeaden.com. Lindsay and Chris are seasoned therapists and coaches, having worked with thousands of people over the past 3 decades. The views and opinions expressed by Chris and Lindsay on the podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. For any and all health concerns or mental health issues, we strongly encourage you to consult a qualified medical professional. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to bringing you more inspiring content on the next episode of Rise the Victor.